I never thought my life would take such a sharp turn. My name is Jake, and I used to think I had it all figured out. A solid job as a project manager at a mid-sized tech company, a nice house in the suburbs, and a beautiful wife named Amber. On the surface, everything looked perfect. But over time, I began to notice some cracks in our seemingly flawless life. Amber had always been the outgoing one, but lately she seemed more distant, a little colder, a little less engaged. At first, I chalked it up to the stress of her new role at the marketing firm. I mean, she was climbing the corporate ladder, and I respected that. The late nights and weekends spent in front of her laptop for work didn't raise any major alarm bells for me until they did. It started with small things. Amber would come home smelling different, not the usual perfume I bought her for our anniversary. It was more musky and earthy. I brushed it off, thinking it was just a new scent she wanted to try. But then she began to change her routines. She accused me of being paranoid if I ever mentioned it, claiming that work stress was just getting to her. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One night she was in the shower and I grabbed her phone to send her a quick text about dinner plans. When I unlocked it, I saw a string of messages from an unknown number. I know I shouldn't have snooped, but curiosity got the best of me. The messages were flirty and intimate, referencing private jokes and plans for meeting up. My heart dropped into my stomach. I felt that familiar pit of dread beginning to settle in. I quickly exited her messages and dropped the phone on the couch as if it were on fire. My mind raced and my stomach knotted. Could she really be cheating on me? I needed evidence, something concrete. The next couple of days I kept my eyes peeled, watching her every move like a hawk. Then I accidentally made a discovery that felt like a punch to the gut. I was at the office late, and I found an email thread between Amber and a wealthy investor named Mark, who I had met a few times at corporate events. They were discussing our upcoming project launch, but what caught my eye was the personal tone of their exchanges. There were mentions of our little secret and "can't wait to see you again" that sent icy chills down my spine. Something snapped inside me that night. I felt betrayed not just as her husband, but as a man who believed in the sanctity of our relationship. I confronted Amber the following evening. I couldn't wait any longer. I called her out, letting all my pent-up fury spill out. "Are you kidding me, Amber? Are you sleeping with Mark?" I shouted, my voice cracking with disbelief. She froze, her eyes wide, then quickly morphed into a defensive glare. "Jake, you're being ridiculous. Mark is just a business associate. You know how much pressure I'm under right now," she spat back, her tone dripping with disdain. "No, Amber, I'm done with your excuses. I saw the messages. I know what's going on." The tears blurred my vision, but I fought them back, trying to maintain some semblance of control. She launched into a barrage of lies, claiming I was overreacting and that I didn't understand the pressures of her job. The more she spoke, the more I felt my heart shatter into a million pieces. Emotions surged within me: anger, betrayal, heartbreak. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of confusion and despair, and there was nothing to hold on to. The woman I loved, the woman I had trusted, had shattered everything we had built together. As I stormed out of the room, I realized I owed it to myself to figure out how I was going to move forward. All I could think about was revenge, not just on my wife but on Mark too. I needed to channel this anger into something productive, something that would make me feel powerful again. It was time to make a plan. But first, I needed to grieve the loss of my marriage and decide how to put all of this into perspective. The very foundation of my life was crumbling around me, and I had to find a way to take back control. The days following my confrontation with Amber felt like an endless loop of disbelief and despair. I couldn't escape the images that replayed in my mind: her laughter in the kitchen, the way she used to curl up next to me on the couch, the whispers of affection that felt like they belonged to someone else now. I was angry, heartbroken, and determined not to let this betrayal define me. As I tried to navigate my feelings, I turned to the one thing that had always been a constant in my life: work. I buried myself in projects at the office, staying late and meeting deadlines with a kind of fervor I hadn't felt in years. Yet, even amidst the chaos of corporate life, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was merely putting up a facade. Each message that pinged on my phone felt like a reminder of my failure at home. It was during one of these long nights at the office that I had an idea, one that began as a flicker and ignited into flames of determination. What if I could use this situation to my advantage? My company was on the brink of an expansion, and Mark, with his influence and connections, had been instrumental in it. But what if I could find a way to establish our own connections? What if I could grow my business without relying on him or Amber? Betrayal. That night I began to sketch out a plan. I started researching potential investors, local business grants, and networking opportunities. I realized that if I played my cards right, I could not only make my company thrive but also show Amber and Mark that I didn't need them. I wanted to build something bigger, a business that would stand on its own, independent from their involvement. But as I dove into my new project, I had to confront the emotional storm brewing inside me. I would catch myself thinking about Amber, wondering if she was still sneaking around with Mark. My gut twisted at the thought. He was everything I wasn't: charismatic, wealthy, and seemingly always in the right place at the right time. The idea of him with her made my blood boil. One evening, I decided to pay Mark a visit. I had recently learned about a business conference he was hosting, and I figured it would be a good opportunity to scope him out, to see the man who had so easily captured my wife's affections. My heart raced as I walked into the venue, the atmosphere thick with ambition and energy. Mark stood at the front of the room, charismatic and charming, captivating the audience with his polished presentation. I felt a knot form in my stomach as I watched him move through the crowd, shaking hands and laughing with guests. It was surreal, seeing the man who had betrayed me in such a light. The confidence radiating from him only fueled my desire for revenge. This was the man I needed to outsmart. After the presentation, I managed to approach him under the guise of discussing a potential collaboration. "Jake, right?" he asked, a wide smile on his face. I forced a smile back and nodded, trying not to let my anger show. "Yeah, I'm with the tech firm looking to expand into new territories," I said, feeling the weight of my words. "I've heard great things about your investments and thought we could explore potential synergies." The conversation flowed surprisingly well, and I could tell he was intrigued. As we exchanged business cards, I felt a rush of adrenaline. I had made contact. I was no longer the passive husband who got blindsided. I was a player in this game now. The more we spoke, the more I realized I could leverage my knowledge of the industry and my skills to create something meaningful. I left the conference feeling invigorated, like I had taken the first step towards reclaiming my life. Back at home, my interactions with Amber became more strained. I would find myself watching her closely, analyzing her every word and movement. She often tried to initiate conversations, but I kept my distance, my mind focused on the plan I had set in motion. One night, as she was getting ready for bed, I overheard her on the phone. I thought she was talking to a friend, but instead, I caught snippets of her conversation about a secret getaway with Mark. My heart sank, but I refused to let her see my pain. Instead, I turned it into fuel, pushing myself harder to turn my business ideas into reality. With every passing day, I became more committed to my mission. I began networking aggressively, attending meetups, and seeking advice from experienced entrepreneurs. I reached out to former colleagues who had moved on to successful ventures. I was determined to build a brand that could stand on its own, one that would thrive without the influence of Amber or Mark. I started working on a pitch for potential investors, pouring my energy into crafting a vision that would be hard to resist. It was during one of these late-night brainstorming sessions that I realized I was no longer just seeking revenge. I was rediscovering myself. I was channeling my heartbreak into something constructive, and with every plan I laid out, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was going to rise from the ashes of my shattered marriage and prove to Amber and Mark that I could build a bigger business without them. As the weeks went by, my focus sharpened like never before. I threw myself into my work with an intensity that surprised even me. I was no longer the husband who had been blindsided by betrayal. I was becoming a man on a mission. Each day brought new challenges, but I embraced them, fueled by the knowledge that I was transforming my pain into power. Amber, on the other hand, was starting to notice a change in me. I could see the confusion in her eyes when I would brush past her in the hallway or respond to her attempts at conversation with a curt nod. She would try to engage me, asking about my day or the projects I was working on, but I kept my responses short, refusing to divulge any details. It was my way of creating distance, and it frustrated her. One evening, she finally confronted me. "Jake, what's going on with you? You're acting like a stranger," she said, her voice tinged with concern. I looked at her, feeling a mix of anger and pity. "You wouldn't understand, Amber. You've chosen your path and I'm choosing mine." I could see her eyes narrow, and for a moment I almost felt guilty, but I quickly pushed that feeling aside. "I don't know what you mean. You're shutting me out. We can fix this, you know," she pleaded, her tone softening. "Fix what?" I snapped back, unable to control my frustration. "What is there to fix when you're busy planning your little escapades with Mark?" Her expression shifted from confusion to indignation. "That's not fair. I told you Mark is just a business contact." "You're being paranoid." But I was beyond caring about her excuses. I had seen enough evidence to know the truth. All I could think about was how I would turn this betrayal into something beneficial for myself. I was determined to find a way not just to survive, but to thrive. With my plan to expand my business solidifying, I decided to take a bold step. I reached out to a couple of investors I had met through my networking efforts. I crafted a compelling pitch that highlighted my vision for a tech startup focusing on innovative solutions in our industry. I was excited about the possibilities and felt more confident than ever. I arranged a meeting with one particular investor, a savvy entrepreneur named Rachel, who had built her own successful firm from the ground up. I was nervous, but knew this was a pivotal moment for me. If I could convince her to back my vision, it would be a giant leap toward establishing my independence. The day of the meeting, I donned my best suit, squared my shoulders, and walked into her office with purpose. Rachel was everything I hoped she would be: sharp, insightful, and genuinely interested in new ideas. I laid out my plan, backing it up with data and projections that I had meticulously researched. "Jake, this is impressive," she said, leaning back in her chair. "But what makes you think you can take on your competitors in this saturated market?" I took a breath, recalling the pain that had pushed me here. "I know what it's like to feel like you're not enough. I've been in a partnership that felt one-sided and disloyal." I paused, gathering my thoughts. "I want to build something that reflects integrity and innovation. I want to prove that we can succeed without relying on the old guard." Rachel studied me for a moment, and I could tell she was weighing my words. "I appreciate your honesty, Jake. It takes guts to put yourself out there like that," she said, her tone shifting. "You've got passion. If you can channel that into a solid business plan, I'd be interested in helping you get started." I left that meeting feeling exhilarated. I was no longer just a pawn in anyone else's game. I was creating my own narrative, and it felt incredible. Over the next few weeks, Rachel and I worked closely together to finalize a business model, crafting every detail to ensure it would stand out in the market. It was hard work, but I found joy in the process. Meanwhile, Amber's attempts to reconnect with me grew increasingly desperate. She would send me texts asking if I wanted to go out for dinner or suggesting we try a couples therapy session. Each time I declined, more focused on my burgeoning business than on repairing what was broken. One night, as I was coming home from a late meeting with Rachel, I noticed Amber sitting on the couch, a look of defeat on her face. She had clearly been waiting for me. "Jake, can we please talk?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I sighed, feeling the weight of the moment. "What do you want to say, Amber? You've made your choices, and I'm done pretending everything is fine." But she was determined. "I realize I messed up. I was stressed and I made poor choices, but I want to fix this. We can work through it together," she said, her eyes pleading. I shook my head. "This isn't something that can be fixed with words, Amber. Trust is broken. You were ready to throw away our marriage for a fling. I don't think we can come back from that." She looked hurt, and for a moment I almost felt sympathy, But then I remembered my purpose. I was on the brink of something new, something powerful. I refused to let her pull me back into the chaos. As I stepped past her on my way to the kitchen, I felt a mix of emotions, sadness, anger, and empowerment. I was finally standing up for myself. I realized that while I was moving on, I was also beginning to heal. I had taken the first steps toward building a life that was truly mine, and I was determined to see it through. With my business on the horizon, I knew I was setting the stage for my own success story, one that didn't involve Amber or Mark. It was time to rise, not just from the ashes of betrayal, but as a testament to resilience and determination. As my business plan began to take shape, I felt a surge of excitement that I hadn't experienced in a long time. I was no longer just reacting to Amber's betrayal. I was actively creating a future for myself, one that felt full of promise. I started to assemble a small team, bringing in people who shared my vision and passion for innovation. Rachel was instrumental in this process, helping me navigate the complexities of launching a startup. Together, we worked late nights and weekends, fueled by coffee and ambition. I couldn't remember the last time I had felt so alive. Each brainstorming session brought fresh ideas, and the camaraderie with my team helped to fill the void that Amber's betrayal had left in my life. Meanwhile, Amber's attempts at reconciliation grew more desperate. She would leave notes on the kitchen counter, suggesting various activities we could do together. I ignored them, focusing instead on drafting proposals and refining our product offerings. The more I immersed myself in work, the clearer my vision became. I was no longer the passive partner in our relationship. I was actively forging my own path. One evening, as I was finalizing our marketing strategy, I received a text from Amber. "Can we at least talk? I miss you." I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. How could she miss me when she had thrown us away so carelessly? I didn't respond immediately, trying to collect my thoughts. I knew I had to be strong to stay focused on my goals. The next day, Rachel and I had a meeting scheduled with a potential investor who was interested in our vision. I felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. If I could secure this investment, it would be a game changer for our startup. I needed to present myself as a confident leader, someone who was not only knowledgeable but also passionate about the potential of our product. As I prepared my pitch, I thought about Amber and how she had once been my biggest supporter. I remembered the late-night discussions we used to have about dreams and ambitions, and how she would light up when I spoke about my ideas. But now, those memories felt tainted, overshadowed by her betrayal. I had to remind myself that I was on the cusp of a new beginning, one that didn't include her. The day of the investor meeting arrived, and I was ready. I walked into the conference room, heart racing but determined to make an impression. Rachel and I presented our vision with passion, highlighting our unique selling points and the potential for growth in the tech market. As I spoke, I could feel the energy in the room shift. The investor was engaged, nodding along as I outlined our plans. After the presentation, we fielded questions, and I could see that our enthusiasm was infectious. By the end of the meeting, the investor expressed genuine interest in backing our startup. I left the meeting feeling like I had just won a significant victory. The feeling of accomplishment was exhilarating, and I couldn't wait to share the news with Rachel. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a new message from Amber. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this, Jake. Please don't shut me out." I hesitated, fingers hovering over the screen. Part of me wanted to respond, to let her know how I was feeling, but I reminded myself of the journey I was on. I had made a commitment to myself to focus on my business and my future. I took a deep breath and opted to ignore her message, channeling my energy back into the success I was building. A few days later, as I was preparing to finalize our first round of funding, I decided to host a small celebration with my team. We had worked so hard, and it felt right to take a moment to acknowledge our progress. We gathered at a local pub, sharing laughter and excitement over drinks. It was liberating to let go, even just for a night. I found myself bonding with my team, sharing stories of our struggles and victories in this journey. I felt a sense of camaraderie that I hadn't realized I was missing. The night was filled with laughter, and for the first time in weeks, I felt genuinely happy. As I returned home that night, I was surprised to find Amber waiting for me in the living room. She looked up, her eyes filled with a mix of hope and anxiety. "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice steady but pleading. I sighed, knowing this conversation had been a long time coming. "What is there left to say, Amber? You made your choices." "I know I messed up," she said, her voice trembling. "But I've realized how much I took for granted. I miss us, Jake. Can we at least try to work through this?" I felt a knot form in my stomach. Here she was asking for forgiveness as if everything could return to normal. "You betrayed my trust, Amber. You crossed a line that can't be uncrossed." I wasn't thinking clearly. I was overwhelmed and I made a terrible mistake. "But I want to make it right. I love you and I believe we can heal," she said, her voice breaking. The sincerity in her words caught me off guard. I could see the pain in her eyes, but I also felt the anger boiling inside me. "You loved me enough to cheat on me." "I can't just forget that," I replied, my voice strained. "I know it won't be easy, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'll go to counseling. I'll work on myself. I just want a chance to show you that I can be the partner you deserve," she pleaded. I was torn. Part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to hold on to the memories of our life together, but another part of me knew that I had already started building a future without her. I had found purpose in my work, in my independence, and I couldn't let that slip away. "Amber, I'm not sure I can go back to that. I'm on a path now that feels right for me. I don't know if we can ever come back from this," I said, voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Her expression fell and I could see the realization wash over her. "So that's it, you're just going to walk away?" "I'm not walking away," I replied, a hint of sadness creeping in. "I'm moving forward. You made your choice and I'm choosing to build a future that doesn't include you." As I walked away from that conversation, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was painful to see Amber hurt, but I knew I had to prioritize my own healing and growth. I was ready to embrace the future, knowing that I was capable of creating something incredible on my own. My journey was just beginning, and I was determined to see it through to the end. The weeks that followed my conversation with Amber were a blur of productivity and emotional upheaval. I was fully immersed in my startup, with funding secured and my vision beginning to take shape. The excitement of building something from the ground up reignited a passion within me that I hadn't felt in years. I surrounded myself with a team of dedicated individuals who shared my vision, and together we worked tirelessly to lay the foundation for our new venture. Amber's presence in my life dwindled further. After our last conversation, she stopped trying to reach out with apologies and pleas for reconciliation. I think she finally understood, on some level, that I was serious about moving on. While part of me felt a twinge of guilt, I also felt a surge of empowerment. I had taken back control of my life, and I was ready to make my mark. One evening, after a long day of meetings and brainstorming sessions, I received a call from Rachel. "I have some exciting news," she exclaimed. "We've been invited to pitch our business at an upcoming tech conference. It's a fantastic opportunity to showcase what we've been building and attract more investors." A rush of adrenaline coursed through me. This was it, the chance I had been waiting for. I spent the next few days preparing, refining our pitch, and ensuring that every detail was perfect. The conference would be a pivotal moment, not just for our business, but for me personally. I wanted to show the world that I was capable of achieving greatness, and I was determined to prove that I didn't need Amber or Mark to succeed. As the day of the conference approached, I felt a mix of excitement and nerves. The venue was massive, filled with entrepreneurs, investors, and tech enthusiasts. I arrived early, packing around the hall, soaking in the atmosphere. I could see other startups setting up their booths, and my heart raced at the thought of presenting in front of such a large audience. When it was finally time for our pitch, I took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage with Rachel. The lights were bright, and the crowd buzzed with anticipation. I felt the weight of their gazes on me as I began to speak, pouring my heart into the presentation. I shared our vision, the impact we aimed to make in the tech industry, and the passion that fueled our drive. As I spoke, I could see nods of approval in the audience. I felt a connection with them. This was my moment to shine. The adrenaline surged and I poured everything I had into our pitch. By the time we finished, the crowd erupted in applause and I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had done it. As we stepped off the stage, Rachel beamed with pride. "You nailed it, Jake. I think we really captured their attention," she said, her excitement palpable. In the days that followed, leads from potential investors began to flood in. I was buoyed by the positive reception, and the momentum fueled my ambition. I was riding high, feeling like I was finally on the path to success. This was the future I had envisioned, one that was filled with possibility and hope. But just when I thought I was on solid ground, my past came crashing back into my life. One afternoon, I received a text from Amber that sent my heart racing. It simply read, "Can we talk? I really need to see you." I stared at the message, torn between anger and curiosity. Part of me wanted to ignore her, to continue moving forward without looking back. But another part of me was curious about what she had to say. After everything that had happened, did she still have something to say that could change anything? Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her. We decided to meet at a coffee shop near my office. As I walked in, I spotted her sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a steaming cup. She looked different, more vulnerable than I remembered, almost fragile. "Thanks for coming," she said, her voice soft. I took a seat across from her, trying to maintain an air of neutrality. "What did you want to talk about?" I asked, keeping my tone steady. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, looking down at her cup. "Since we last spoke, I've really reflected on what happened between us. I've been going to therapy and trying to understand my choices. I realize how much I hurt you, and I'm truly sorry. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know that I've changed." I felt a mixture of emotions rising within me. Part of me was still angry, still hurt by her betrayal. But another part of me saw the sincerity in her eyes, the desperation to make amends. "Amber, I do know what you expect from me. You hurt me deeply. I've spent so much time building my life back up, and I don't know if I can let you back in." "I understand," she replied, tears welling in her eyes. "I just want you to know that I've been working on myself. I miss you, I miss us. I'm not asking for everything to go back to normal, but I want to be a part of your life again, even if it's just as friends. I want to support you in your journey." I felt a pang of nostalgia. Memories flooded back, times when we were happy, when life felt simpler, but I couldn't ignore the reality of what she had done. "I'm glad you're working on yourself, but I'm not in a place where I can let you back in, Amber. I'm focused on my business and my future. I can't risk getting hurt again." Her expression fell, and I could see the disappointment wash over her. "I get it. I just wanted you to know that I'm here if you ever decide to open that door again." I nodded, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. "I appreciate that, but right now I need to keep moving forward." As I left the coffee shop, I felt a sense of closure. Amber's attempt to reconnect had brought back memories I had tried to bury, but it solidified my resolve. I was no longer the man who had been blindsided by betrayal. I was a man on a mission, determined to succeed on my terms. With every step I took toward my office, I felt renewed, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. I was rising from the ashes of my past, and I was determined to build a future that was bright, fulfilling, and entirely mine. As I returned to the office, I felt a sense of clarity wash over me. My conversation with Amber had been bittersweet, but it had reaffirmed my resolve to focus on my own growth. I was no longer tethered to the past. I had a future to build, and I was determined to see it through. In the weeks that followed, our startup continued to gain traction. The positive feedback from investors at the conference had led to several promising meetings, and soon we had raised enough capital to move forward with our first product launch. My team and I worked tirelessly, pouring our hearts and souls into this venture. It was exhilarating to see our ideas come to life, to witness the vision I had fought so hard to create manifesting before my eyes. One evening, after a long day of finalizing product details, I decided to treat myself. I ventured out to a local restaurant to celebrate the small victories we had achieved. As I sipped my drink, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought me to this point. I had navigated heartbreak, betrayal, and self-discovery, and now I was standing on the brink of something truly incredible. A few days later, we officially launched our product. The day was filled with anticipation and excitement. I watched as our innovative solution hit the market, receiving immediate positive feedback from customers and industry experts alike. It felt surreal. I had built this from the ground up, fueled by determination and a desire to prove myself. As the weeks turned into months, our business began to thrive. We attracted more investors, expanded our team, and even garnered attention from industry media. I was living the dream I had once only fantasized about, and with every success I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was no longer just a victim of betrayal. I was a successful entrepreneur, carving out my own path. Despite the progress, there were still echoes of the past. I occasionally heard about Amber through mutual friends. They would mention her attempts to rebuild her life, her efforts to find a new job, and her ongoing therapy. I felt a pang of sympathy, but I also recognized that my focus needed to remain forward-looking. One evening, as I was leaving the office late, I bumped into Amber outside the building. She looked hesitant but relieved to see me. "Hey, Jake," she said softly, her eyes searching mine for a reaction. "Hey," I replied, feeling the familiar mix of emotions. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to catch up, see how you've been doing," she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. I took a breath, knowing that this moment could open old wounds or create new opportunities. "I've been good, busy with work, but things are moving in the right direction." "I'm glad to hear that," she said, her gaze dropping to the ground. "I've been working on myself, trying to become a better person. I hope one day you'll be able to forgive me." I studied her for a moment. She looked more vulnerable than I had seen her before, and I could sense the sincerity in her voice. "Amber, I appreciate that, but the truth is that I've moved on. I'm focused on my business and my future, and I need to keep it that way." She nodded, her expression resigned but understanding. "I get it. I just wanted to let you know that if you ever decide to reach out, I'd be here." "Thank you," I replied, feeling a sense of closure. "I wish you all the best in your journey." As we parted ways, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I had confronted my past, acknowledged the pain, and now I was ready to fully embrace my future. I realized that forgiveness wasn't just about Amber. It was about liberating myself from the burden of resentment. I was ready to let go. With our business thriving and my personal life on the upswing, I felt a sense of hope for what lay ahead. I had learned valuable lessons through this experience: the importance of self-worth, the power of resilience, and the realization that it's okay to prioritize my own needs. As I drove home that evening, I glanced at the city lights shining brightly against the night sky. I felt a surge of gratitude for the journey that had led me here, for the challenges I had overcome, and for the future that awaited. I was no longer defined by betrayal. I was defined by my strength and determination. In the end, I had built a life that was truly mine, a life filled with purpose, ambition, and the promise of new beginnings. I had discovered that sometimes the most painful experiences can lead to the most profound growth, and I was excited to see where this new path would take me.